Hi, today I'm going to give a lesson on bar chords. With bar chords you can play a lot of different chords knowing really only a couple of really basic shapes that you probably know already. So to start off, there's a couple things you need to know first. The first thing is, and most of you probably already know this, but if you don't, the names of the strings. Okay, there's an easy way to remember this. Going from top to bottom, if you use the mnemonic device, Eddie ate dynamite. Goodbye, Eddie. So E, A, D, G, B, E. Eddie ate dynamite. Goodbye, Eddie. For the purposes of the bar chords we're going to be talking about today, really the only ones we need to concern ourselves with are the low E and the A, so the top two strings, E and A. So from there, the next thing you need to know is the musical alphabet. The musical alphabet goes from A to G with sharps and flats in between. For the purposes of this, we're going to stick with sharps. It makes it a little easier starting out, but basically between every note there is a sharp with two exceptions. There is no B sharp and there is no E sharp, but every other note gets a sharp. So if we know that our top string is E, the next note, because there is no E sharp, is F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and E. Okay, there's a couple of tricks for remembering these, so you don't have to count it up every time, and you're going to want to memorize the notes on the top two strings. And the trick is to use the dots. If you use the dots as a point of reference and only memorize the natural notes, that means not the sharps, not the flats, then it gets a lot easier, right? Because if you look at your dots, third dot is G, fifth dot is A, third dot on the 7th fret is B, and then the next dot, it's a sharp on there, but if you use it as a point of reference and know that on either side of it are C and D, it becomes very easy to memorize pretty quickly, right? So E, F, G, A, B, C, and D. And the fret with the two dots is the same as the open string. So E and E, an octave higher. Okay, so once you know that, the same thing applies on the A string. A sharp, B, C, because there's no C sharp. Because there's no B sharp rather. C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and G. So again, you can use the dots. A, C, D, E, F, and G. And the double dot is once again your A, like your open string. So once you know that, and once you learn movable chord shapes, you only have to learn the chord shape once, and if you know where the root note is, the note that the chord is based on, you just move that shape to that space, and you've got your chord. One other thing I will mention, just in case it's not clear, I didn't really talk about flats, but flats are the same thing as sharps, just going the other way, right? So depending on what note you're talking about, the same note can be both a sharp and a flat. What I mean by that is when you're moving up the neck, G, G sharp, A. If you're moving backwards, A flat, G. So G sharp and A flat are the same note. But for right now, like I said, we're going to stick with sharps. I just wanted to explain that concept. So that takes us to our bar chords. Basically, I think most people have probably used a capo at some point in time. Capo, and I don't have one right with me now, it's basically a clamp that you stick over the end of your guitar, and it allows you to play in higher keys. You can move it up the neck. So basically, you can use a G chord shape or a C chord shape or an A chord shape or whatever chord shape you like, anywhere up the neck, changing the pitch to suit your voice or to make the song easier to play. When you do a bar chord, what you're doing is using your first finger as a capo. So basically, you're taking a chord that you already know, using different fingers to play it because you need that first finger free to use it as a capo. So I'm going to show you the most often used bar chord shape, that of an E chord. So I think most people know how to play an E chord. If you're learning about bar chords, you already know this. E chord, like that. If you want to use a bar chord, what you can do is basically play that same chord, but instead of using your first, second, and third fingers, you're going to use your second, third, and fourth. So, like this, still an E. If you slide it up a fret, and you drop that bar down, now you have an F chord, right? And basically, you know this is an F. That first note here is an F note. Use that chord shape. So now that we've learned all the notes up the neck, G, A, B, and so on, if you bar on that same fret and use an E chord shape, you now have F chord, G chord, A chord, B chord, C, D, and so on. Any of the sharps and flats as well. So knowing that one bar chord shape basically teaches you 12 chords because you can play it in each of the 12 notes that exist, A through G with the sharps and flats. The same thing works for any chord. The other most common one is using an A chord shape. Where this one is a little bit different is that your root note, instead of being on the 6th string, is on the 5th string. So basically, you're not playing the top string at all, and again, you're barring, and because this was a little bit more difficult in some respects, a lot of people don't play the high E string, right? So some people, if their fingers are particularly dexterous, can play that high E string. Some people play it with their third finger. I play it with my pinky typically, but whatever works for you. And again, you can slide that up. There's a B chord, C chord. You see that sounds like your normal open C chord. You're barring it. C chord, D, E, and so on. So if that works for an E chord and an A chord, it'll work for any chord. So basically the variations on those chords open up a whole pile of chords for you. So for example, we started off with an E, right? But if you lift your first finger, you have an E minor. So if the E chord shape is movable, so is the E minor chord shape. You just have to use your third and fourth finger. And for me, this demystified a whole pile of stuff. When someone said, play a G sharp minor, before I learned how to play bar chords, I'd be like, I guess I'm not learning that song. But now, I know where a G sharp note is, because I know my G is in the 3rd fret on the top string. And now I move it up one for the sharp, and I play the bar chord. It's basically the same as that major bar chord, except you're lifting your second finger. By the same token, if it works for a minor chord, it can also work for a 7th chord. An E7 chord, for example, E. If you lift your third finger, you've got E7. So now, if you carry that through with the same thing we've been doing, moving that bar down further, you've got a G7, A7, B7, and so on. So basically, you've got that major chord shape, and you're lifting your pinky to get that 7th sound. Another one that you don't see as often, but is a really cool chord, is a minor 7th chord. And it's actually the easiest one to play. When you bar basically if you start with that E shape bar chord, I'm on a G here. To play a G minor 7th, you would lift both your second and your pinky finger. So you just have your third finger sitting on the 5th string. I know a song in particular I found this type of chord useful for was Do You Want to Know a Secret by the Beatles. I remember when I looked that up online to see what chords were in it, and I'm like, I will never figure out this song. There's way too many chords. It's way too complicated. But it's not really. It's just a series of minor 7th chords in succession. It starts on an E. When you see that written down, that's G sharp minor 7th, G minor 7th, F sharp minor 7th, and if you've not used bar chords before, that's very intimidating. Now it's simple. The same thing holds true with your A chord shape. The different variations, that is. You know how to play an A minor, an A 7th, and an A minor 7th. Well, then you can carry those through with the bar as well. So if you've got your major chord, there's a C major. Now I want to play a C minor. It's just that A minor chord shape slid up a couple frets. If I lift my pinky from there, I've got a C minor 7th. And if I lift my second finger and drop my pinky on the 2nd fret, I've got a C7 chord. So just with those 4 variations, that's 48 different chords, because you've got 4 variations over 12 different keys. The last type of chord I'll show you is probably the simplest and one that you see a lot in rock, and that's called a 5th chord, more commonly known as a power chord. And basically what it is, it's a 2-note chord. Most chords are what they call triads, so it has 3 notes in it at least until you get into the 7ths and whatnot. But without getting into too much theory, it's basically, if I was to play a G power chord, G root note, and basically down 2 frets and a string beneath, there's a G power chord. You can also drop the pinky or bar across to get basically a 3-note chord, but it's really a 2-note chord because this note I added is the root note just an octave higher. And you see this in a lot of heavy metal and hard rock, and basically they're kind of cool chords because they're neither minor nor major, so they fit over a lot of different stuff. But basically the same concept applies for power chords as all of your bar chords. They're movable. So G, A, C, D, E. That's it. Bar chords are not that complicated. The most difficult part really is just getting your fingers used to playing them. Understanding how they work, though, goes a long way in expanding the amount of chords you know and the amount of chords that you can play. One little pointer or trick, I guess, for bar chords, a lot of people try to lay their finger right completely flat when they're barring, right? That is not as effective. You kind of have it on a bit of an angle, so it's really kind of the side of your finger that's pushing down, and you'll find it a lot easier to depress the strings, keep them down, and get that full sound. But when you're practicing them, if you're not comfortable with them, if you haven't done them a lot, pick them through one note at a time and make sure that each one rings clearly. And keep practicing. It seems difficult at first, but before long you'll be playing these things like crazy. Anyway, that's my explanation of bar chords. I hope it was helpful. If you did find it helpful, give me a like or a subscribe. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I will do what I can to clarify. Thanks for watching.